Welcome everybody to Tales from the Cage. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. I wanted to do a resurgence, but the only difference from our last ones and slightly abridged with our Ray Flores interview is we're going to change the dynamic of this whole podcast, and we're going to make it all local MMA, Chicagoland, Northwest Indiana, and not just local, but the true pioneer era, especially coming from the early 2000s up to the late 2000s. That's what we're looking to do. And who better to start this off with the one and only Jay El Terrible Estrada. How's it going, Jay?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing good. All right, I'm glad to have you on. We talked about you on in the last one, which is a while back now, and the Ray Flores one. We're gonna dive into that in a little bit, but let's start from the very beginning. All right, so if you're watching this, you either know me or myself or Jay, or you just kind of somehow stumbled on it and didn't X out yet. But Jay's a pioneer in the early days of mixed martial arts, especially in the Chicagoland area. All right. I mean, one of the original staples, that's for sure. Before you started fighting, this is what I want to talk about first. Is you obviously have a
Okay.
wrestling background. What's the very
Yeah.
beginning of that?
Wow. Wrestling, wrestling. I didn't know back coming from the South Side. I didn't really know nothing much about wrestling up until high school. Now my son wrestles, and we know about the IKWF and stuff, and the level of competition there is at the youth level now. Me growing up, I was unfamiliar with that at all. My brother started wrestling his freshman year in high school at Bogan, and he kind of caught on to it. And my eighth grade year, I was in eighth grade. I used to get off of school about 2:30. I used to jump on the CTA and then drive with the 79 to Pulaski and get a couple of workouts with him and the wrestling team. And then on Sundays, we have open mat at Mount Carmel. So I think in eighth grade is when I got a feel for what even the sport was with wrestling. And then once I got to high school, it was, we were all in it at that point.
Did you go to Bogan?
Yeah, I went to Bogan, graduated from Bogan.
Okay, yeah, my dad too. One of my purple belts. I think Lewis Taylor. Am I wrong?
Yeah, Lewis Terry. Yeah, Lewis Terry from Bogan. Bella Muhammad's from Bogan.
Yes.
We were all the same coach.
So, would you consider that? And one of my purple belts, Eric Lucio, he fought a bunch at Bourbon Street too. Would you consider that like an I would say under the radar breeding ground for like MMA fighters?
I think honestly, I think any CPS school with a wrestling program, I think just kids from the city are just so much. We grew up in a different lifestyle.
Right.
So I think they're just so much tougher. If you got a coach, we had a great coach. I always had the same coach. I had the same coach, Lewis Taylor. I think you got a coach with some credentials and knows how to teach the kids how to teach the sport of wrestling, how to coach, and not just that, but relate with the kids. Because city kids, you got a different breed. I mean, you don't have the structure, you don't have the home structure, you don't have the family support. So the kids are doing it. I believe myself, my brother, is you're doing it for the love of the sport, and you want to succeed on your own level. There's really no. A lot of homes don't have the family support as you do as normal youth sports do. So right. I think coming from the South Side and a program, you just breed mean kids, tough kids. You teach them a little talent, and they're off on their own there.
And you know what? I think like a difference between, let's just say that Bogan area, or really, like you said, any Chicago public school, and then you take things far southwest, you take things to Mokina, New Lenox, really good wrestlers. But anytime, like any of my friends from that era or area, I should say, who are good wrestlers, who I would try to, hey, why don't you start fighting? No, I'm going to this Big Ten school and I'm going to get my dental degree or whatever this is. I feel like that, like I guess that inner city, like you said, toughness and everything, where that's almost a better route for them is to start fighting, because they're probably not seeing themselves as a future doctor, dentist, lawyer, whatever it may be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, I would tell people all the time. I tell people today, I would rather fight a skilled guy than a tough guy. Right. A skilled guy, you could break him. You could break their spirit. You just put it on him, you could break him. I don't care how I'm telling you. Once you start cracking that dude, he's gonna break. Right. A tough dude. I mean, I fought some tough dudes, and they're just not gonna quit. There's no quitting them. There's no quitting them. You get a guy like my son's a top level wrestler. And he has no care to get punched in the face. That's not what he's from. It's not how he was raised, and he has no desire to get punched in the face. You see a lot of these guys too from New Lenox or Frankfurt or South Suburbs. They get it. I'm sure you see him playing times. I see him playing times while reffing. They're talented, but they've never been in a scrap before.
Right.
And once they get punched, it's realized, you can see the fear in their eyes. The different. Now they're on defense versus the offense. Now it's the real deal. You know, you see
Right.
that a lot in the sport coming up. Whereas some of these kids growing up, inner city kids, or even just rough neighborhoods, they've been punched before multiple times. They've been a
Right.
number of scraps. Getting into MMA fight is just something part of every day. You know.
No, exactly. So now, all right, you started wrestling. What was your transition into MMA? Did somebody talk you into it? Was something that you wanted to do originally?
My transition, I wrestled this being part of just scrapping my whole life and wrestling my whole fight, the whole love of fighting has always been there. And I think my brother, he was here on recruiting duty here. He was a recruiter. He retired from the Marine Corps. He was on
Okay.
recruiting duty. And I think Joe Guida called the recruiting office to do the color guard. Actually, Guida is a former Marine.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes.
so he always has the color guard there. Next time he does it. So my brother, and that was back when they had the fights at St. Andrew Gym. And then so my brother said, "You got to come check this stuff out. You got to come check this shit out." You know. And we went to the show, and I was like, wow, it was just a whole new world. Like these people are actually scrapping. Everybody's turning around. Where every time I fought, I get locked up. You know.
Right.
So for me, it was instant fall in love. The UFC was probably early UFC days, like couple 2 or 3 or whatever. It was earlier days of the UFC. So even though you've seen it on TV here ago, once we seen it live at St. Andrew's Gym, it was instant attraction. And we're like, yeah, we want to get plugged in. And that's kind of was first introduced. We started training. My brother actually was training at Guatia, and I went there for a little bit, and then I transitioned to going to Combat No. And he was, Bob Sherman was another former Marine as well. So
Yes.
that's how my brother kind of got clicked in and kind of dragged. I kind of followed suit with him, you know.
Now, when you started, I shouldn't say when you started getting MMA, especially that era, you usually just go with whatever your initial tool is. But when you started to choose to develop a little bit more than just takedowns, what did you try to focus more on, striking or jujitsu, when it comes to adding a new tool?
I think it was jujitsu. I think hands was my least concern. What I felt. And I still I'm a wrestler. I'm a diehard wrestler. I'm gonna grab you. I'm gonna take you down.
Yeah.
I don't care how good your hands are. If I close at distance, I'm gonna get a hold of you. I'm taking you down. So I wasn't really concerned about my hands, really, and especially back in now it's a different game. The sport's a different sport.
Right.
But back in
Exactly.
them days, I was more concerned about jujitsu because being a wrestler, I'm not comfortable being on my back. So I needed to start. If I did get taken out, if I did fight a better wrestler, I couldn't get the takedown. What am I going to do off my back? And
Right.
that kind of transition. That was, yeah, man. I still consider the ground game the better game. I mean,
Oh, me
I'm not a
too.
striker. I'm not a striker.
Right.
I'm a fan of sport. Sport transitions a lot. Yeah, I'm a fan of the striking game. Everybody loves to knock out, but I'm still, a grappler.
Right.
Once I get you down, we're gonna be on the mat.
No, I'm in the same boat. Now, all right, your first documented fight online is the Sam Stout fight, June 7th, 2003, for Joe Goitia, when it was Total Martial Arts Challenge. Is that
Yeah.
your actual first fight, or was there something that wasn't put up?
There was something, but it was not. You know, there was no really rules. I mean, sanctioning or how it was go. I fought was and back then I guess the rules was allowed in Chicago or Illinois was different. I fought at Joe's on Weed Street. I fought Eric Snyder. Um, I fought him, and I think the rules were striking on your feet, and once you got to the ground, it was just grappling. There was no striking on the ground. It was just grappling. And I fought him at Joe's Bar on Weed Street, the original Joe's Bar,
Right.
and I took L. I wound up going out right there. I actually wound up dropping him. And I went to the ground, and I was new to the jiu-jitsu game. I was just going out there to pretty much street fight, I had wrestling ability, and I wound up getting triangle choked like the first round.
Yeah.
So
So
that
that was
was
before your Sam Stout fight?
yeah, that was my first Samsung. That was my first kind of introduction into the fight game.
Yeah.
Into the fight.
Now, what did you know about Sam Stout going into Total Martial Arts Challenge?
Nothing at all. He was coming from I think was his Thompson was his coach at that
Sean
time. He was
Tompkins. Yeah.
yeah, Tompkins. He was a recognized kickboxing coach. We knew they were coming out with kickboxers from Canada, and I think my plan was the same as that first fight there to my last fight, get a takedown.
Right.
It's always been a game plan. So I pretty much took him down a little exchange with him, took him down pretty easy. And him being young and inexperienced to the game as well, he gave up his back. I didn't want him choking him out or TKO whenever TKO. I don't remember how to finish was, but I remember that took out pretty easy, gave up his back, and that was it.
And if you weren't around back then, like bringing fighters in from Canada wasn't the allure of, oh, look, we have international fighters. It was you both ends had to. There wasn't a lot of local fighters. There was some, but not how it is now. And in Canada, where were they going to fight? They had TKO up there, and I don't even know if that was around in 2003. Maybe it was, but they had the issue of, hey, we can't get fights. We have to go down to the United States to be able to do this.
Yeah. It was getting. I don't know how they got down there. Then they continued coming down along with the XFOs coming around. A lot of them guys were training, coming out and fighting on the XFO on Jeff Kern's card.
Yeah, and honestly, that kind of went full circle. And during COVID, right after that, they were still locked down. We were getting fighters over at Bourbon Street from Canada because that was, I mean, really a lot of different states. I think I was down cornering someone in like Kentucky, and there was someone who drove from Canada. I'm still Facebook friends with a guy who was in our locker room. It's just, it's kind of funny how it almost went back to how it was almost 20 years ago.
Yeah. When I went to Street Beefs with Angelo Rivera a couple of years back, and it was guys from, it reminded me of like old school. It was like guys lined up like, hey, who you want to fight? And you look over there to the left, I'll fight you. You want to fight? Like, we're about the same size, no weight, no nothing. It just kind of, yeah, we'll fight. It reminded me like, and he had guys from all over. Just because some of the states weren't sanctioned, they didn't have it in those states, so they were traveling, to get some fights in.
Angelo Rivera fought at Street Beefs.
Yeah.
Did he have to go under like a fake name, like how they have the nicknames when they fight?
Okay, maybe I should have said that.
That's all right.
No, he didn't.
No, I mean, I don't mean for the commission. I mean, but
no, he didn't.
If you watch their videos, it's all like they're all nicknames, like street names. And I've always wondered if like it's just a coincidence that everybody wants to use a nickname instead, or if like they're actually telling them. But
yeah, I don't know. We could change that. But I did say I seen the craziest thing I ever seen in my life. It was wheelchair boxing. This guy hell on wheels, and he was paralyzed. And I guess I went to a show, and when we get there, I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Like, there's a lot of you see handicapped people, people in wheelchairs or disabled people, but there was like a lot, and I'm like, more than normal, like you see at any event. And I'm like, what the hell is a lot of, crippled people here, wheelchairs, disabled people. And sure enough, when it was his time to fight, he had his own little crew, and they couldn't find no one to fight. So they just put a regular dude, and they duct taped him into the freaking wheelchair so he couldn't move his hips. They started beating the shit out of each other. Really, it was crazy. It was crazy.
There was a movie, I don't remember what it was, but a guy had an issue with a guy in a wheelchair, so he sat in his own wheelchair to fight him to make it fair. Like, that's what that reminds me of. Actually,
you can YouTube it. How these names hell on wheels? You can YouTube it. He's got a following. He's got a following for sure.
Now, so you had a couple more wins after your Sam Stout fight. Who was booking your fights at this time?
At that time, it's funny, and Mike Davis. I come across Mike Davis. I think I was working out in Mount Greenwood Park at the wrestling room underneath Mount Greenwood Park. A couple of us just got together, and I ran into Mike Davis, and I didn't even have any fights at that time, I believe. Only time I fought, I had the one fight on Goitia's card, and that's because I was training. I was training with Guida, and that's how I got that first fight. After that, I ran to Mike Davis, and he was thinking about starting his own fight gear clothing line in Cutthroat. And he kind of partnered me and said, hey, who are you getting your fights? And I was like, I never even thought about it. I got one fight here. I got one fight on my belt. I'm not thinking about a second, or would like to do one. And he, tossed the idea around. He goes, what if I get you some fights? And I'm like, sure, whatever, And of course, back then, the fights weren't paying much. I said, I ain't got nothing. I'm not going to pay you. He's like, no. He goes, we'll work a little partnership because I'm trying to get my T-shirt, my fight gear clothing line along. He's like, so I'm working with other promoters and fighters to be as a vendor there, get my gear and stuff, and sponsor the shows, sponsor the events. He said, when I do that, I kind of tag you along. On top of that, I got a fighter coming in, and he did for just being a couple of local guys. He got me on some good cards, some big shows, and decent paydays. You know what I mean? And it just started off with just saying friendship here. You do me a solid, I'm going to do you a solid. And he started pushing his Cutthroat marketing line, and eventually started the fights at Bourbon Street.
You know,
But
ironically,
yeah, he's
I was having some flashbacks earlier that Mount Green wrestling room, the green and yellow mats. Yeah, I
yeah.
was telling my fiance about my days back there a long time ago. So your first loss was to Bart Pelashevsky at Extreme Challenge 54. Obviously two locals fighting in Iowa. Did you already know about Bart or much about him before that fight was booked, just from the local crowd?
No, I didn't know nothing about. I mean, everybody was kind of, you know, the fight game was kind of new to everybody, and it was he trained at Curran's gym, so you can anticipate he's a jiu-jitsu guy, you know. That was that was my first real like, wow, this is. I mean, everybody else had pretty much scraped through just on pure wrestling alone.
Yeah.
I think Bart was the first one to say, "Hey, this was the first one." I think I was 7-0 going into that fight, or seven. And he gave me it was 7-0 or 6-0 going into that fight, and it was at that point where like, hey, is this what you want to do? Do you want to pursue this? Because every time it was just fun. You know what I mean? I think my second and third fight, I fought down at the Silver Slipper in Ottawa, a Phyllis John's card. That was, it was, I think they paid me $75 and $75. I made $150 off that fight.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really fighting about the money. I wasn't really care about the record. It was more or less about, you want to fight? Yeah, let's fight. You know? And I think after losing to Bart, he was young. He was quite a few years younger than me, and it was really you don't like the taste of defeat.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, this sucked. Do I want to do it again? And like, I was already down 7-8 fight, and I was like, yeah, I want to do this again. And I think that's when I kind of started training a little bit more, thinking a little bit different, and trying to not pursue a career in it, but just taking things a little more serious,
Right. Now you go to Ironheart Crown 6. You're facing Antoine Skinner, known as Lil Rampage. Now that card was huge, especially for the area. That was Miguel Torres's first loss. He lost to Ryan Ackerman. Derek Noble beat Joey Gilbert. Stephan Bonner's on the card. Bart was actually on that card too. I heard that at weigh-ins, you didn't really know who Antoine Skinner was. You're looking around and then you see him and you're like, oh shit, like look at this guy. He's got the cauliflower ear. He looks like Quentin Jackson. What were your thoughts when you saw this guy in person?
My initial thoughts, it was at weigh-ins. I'm like, I thought these guys were setting me up to lose. Yeah, I mean, I'm a skinny little Mexican kid. I mean, I never was been the one with the six-pack or big triceps or big arms. I just been, tough dude. And I seen this guy and I'm like, dude, these guys are setting me up to get my ass whipped. Like, I'm thinking he's so titchy, he's their big guy. Like, this is not their matchup,
right?
And he was pretty jacked. He was pretty jacked, dude.
Yeah.
But when I went out there, obviously you go into fight mode, and I was a hell of a lot better than he was. He had a big takedown right at the back, and the crowds. I mean, the Hammond Civic Center and back in the days was a place to be, and that place was packed. I want to say it was sold out. I mean, it was a packed crowd, and I got picked up and slammed me like a rat crowd. Yeah, the crowd are going crazy, and I just stood calm. I've been here before, working my jiu-jitsu, got to the feet, swept them. I think we went. Shudo was different back then, so it was. I think was Shudo's Shudo event, so it was 2 rounds, and then
2 5s.
It was 2 5s. If it was still a split decision, then you would go a third round. If it was unanimous, you would run. It was done after 2. So I don't remember if it was a TKO second round or if it was a decision second round, but I know it didn't go to third.
Now after that, actually, you know what? Let me ask if you remember, who did you deal with more for Ironheart at that time? Eric Moon or Braulio Corral?
Again, I was cool. Mike Davis was one talking about that.
Okay.
I was cool with them. I talked to them and but it was both of them. I think they're pretty much equal partnership.
Yeah.
As far as when I was talking to them, I worked out brothers quite a few times after that. So I really didn't, as far as the business part, know who was dealing with that.
Yeah. So now you get 2 more wins after that. And one of them was over Jason Bender. I don't know if you follow him now, but he's got his own gym. I see him all the time at grappling tournaments. He's actually got pretty good grapplers that compete. Doesn't have the best record at all, but really tough. When you fought him, Matt Hughes was in his corner. Did that play an effect on you, seeing a very prime Matt Hughes at the time, you know, famous, like, hey,
Uh
this training partner?
no, it kind of motivated me. Like this dude's a somebody. Again, the records don't really mean much, and even back then, it was just how much. My big thing is how much you pay me to fight was pretty much my mentality. Was what we getting paid here? And like I said, I already had some. I think I only had one loss to Bart at the time, so I was feeling pretty confident whoever I fought. And to see Matt Hughes, it was like, and then I think I knocked him. I dropped him. It was a TKO, whatever. It was a knockout TKO, and I remember like, man, it was a good feeling. I mean, seeing Matt Hughes in there and in his corner drop, like he got dropped in his corner. I was like, it was good. It was a good feeling. It was a good feeling. It was like saying, and during those times, I'm already going into double-digit fight records, good record, and I was feeling good. I was rolling.
Now, King October 23rd that year, you go fight King of the Cage against Luke Spencer. You beat him in the first round by guillotine. I was like King of the Cage Buckeye Nuts, I think was the name. Which actually that event, King of the Cage was big at the time. I have the DVD of that somewhere. It was a box set that you could get at back in the day.
I had it at Walmart. Bought it at Walmart.
Okay, yeah, with Charles Bennett on the front, right? Yeah. Luke Spencer, did you know anything about him? Because he's actually he was legit. He was 6-1 I think he was 6-1 at the time, and his only loss was in the third round to George Gurgel.
Yeah, I remember George Gurgel. I just remembered him being as a wrestler, a solid wrestler. I don't know if he was a college wrestler or coming from Ohio's a big wrestling state. So I just respected him as a wrestler. And I remember that fight. It's like, I'm going to try to keep him up. I'm going to try to keep him up, work my hands, and try to go for knockout. After fighting Bender, I knew I got some power in these hands. I mean, I may not be the technical, but I knew I got some power. And my goal, I think, was to go out there and try to swing with him. And I think the highlight of it, I think I wound up throwing him like 2 or 3 times because he was coming in so aggressively. I wound up hit him with a lateral drop like 2 or 3 times in that fight. Got back to her feet, and obviously he was a better wrestler than I was, but that just proved to me my game was coming along as far as my jiu-jitsu, because I could get back to my feet. You know, I could hit the sweep or create space, forget trying to scramble, but trying to get back to my feet and my hands. You know, that was the game plan going into it. You know.
Now I'm going to bring up two losses, but the first one I'm going to ask, it was Ironheart Crown 8, November 2004. Joe Pearson, the Triangular Strangler. Did he already have that reputation at the time to like, hey, watch out for this one move, or was it still kind of like,
you know, I seen him fight again at Phil Johns' card down in Ottawa. He fought maybe one of the cards I was on down there. He fought I went down there and cornered. I don't remember who I cornered. I cornered someone that I didn't see him fight again. So I seen like 3 of his fights win by triangle. And I was not intimidated by it. I was like, this is a one-trick pony. He's not going to hit me with a trick, especially when you know what's coming. Right. You know, I was pretty confident taking that fight. And I was like, number one, this dude's, and again, I'm trying to transition my hands to the fight game at this point. And I was like, there's no way this guy's going to take me down. I think he was a Miletich guy.
He was.
I said, there's no, I don't care who I'm wrestling with. He's not. I mean, I was training I wasn't training at G2 yet, but I was, confident he wasn't going to take me down. And so I wasn't worried about his triangle. He wound up shooting a blast double, but now I look back on it, it wasn't really to take me down. That's how he closed the distance. Right. He shot in a double and he pulled guard. And we pulled guard. That was he wound up catching him in a triangle. Yeah, that sucked.
There's some of his fights where he'll do a full guard jump, you know.
Yeah.
I think it just took people a long time to, and again, this is really like, it's technically not pre-internet, but pre-social media, pre-YouTube. Even Sherdog wasn't a very popular site at that time, where like, I think once it started coming out, okay, people started counting all these triangle wins is when they started, and it actually able to access video online. It's really, Joe Pearson wasn't very good if somebody pulled guard on him, which no one would have thought.
Well, he fought Uriah Faber in the WC, and he almost tapped Faber in that triangle. Yeah,
Yeah.
he had him tight. They wanted to pick him up, but then slam it a couple times. He kept
Yeah.
blocking it in. He had him tight. He had him tight.
Yeah. No, and he has a win in Pride as well. He was legit. Like he really was. I mean, he kind of fell apart at the end, but during that time, I mean, that guy, he was legit.
Yeah. It was one of those things, you know it's coming, but to try to stop it. That was the hard part.
Right.
When you know it's coming, you can't stop it. That's what sucked. Yeah.
Now, the next one I mentioned, Clay Guida Combat 04. Was there much of a rivalry going into that?
Between us, no. I think between with G2 coming around, I think it was more gym. I wouldn't say gym rivalry because we didn't fight too much, but I think they were the respected team. I think Commando, we had a lot of tough guys coming out. And I think G2 actually had a solid full room of guys. I don't think there was no rivalry between us personally. It was just more bigger gyms in the area fighting each other.
Now, were you training with Shoney Carter during that?
Yeah, well, Shoney Carter was there, but he was kind of on his way out during that fight. I think that after losing to Clay was kind of one of the main reasons why I left Commando and I started training G2. I think a lot of guys when I first started training Commando were there. We had, Shoney Carter was there, Brian Gass was there, Terry Martin was there. We had a lot of tough dudes coming out there that were fighting. And even now, you look at the guys in UFC. You got Carlos Hernandez. He was a little kid at Carl.
Right.
Chepe was a little kid at Commando. You got guys that were those are tough. Always been a tough gym. But I think during that stretch, we kind of fell off a little bit. And I felt coming into that Clay's fight, I didn't have a lot of partners to get me ready. I wasn't really ready. I think going in, I had a lot of false confidence. I knew Clay, and even years after training with Clay, I don't think he's the toughest guy in the gym. But when he gets in that ring, he turns it on.
No, that's actually what that's the funny legend is you train with Clay, if you're somewhat okay, you're probably going to tap him out. Like,
yeah,
he's not, I mean, it's like, and it might happen over and over and over again.
He's not
goes again, and there's his armbar. He gets armbar and he gets choked. But he's one of those people where, like, I don't know how he does it, but he just really turns it up in the fight. He cornered me for my second one, and it's only my second fight, and I'm the typical person going out there like most fighters are, like, all right, what did I sign myself up for? And Clay's bouncing up, going nuts behind me, and I'm like, why is he more excited than I am? I'm the one going, and he's telling me, just have fun in there, just trust me, just have fun in there. And I'm looking back like, it's a lot of fun things to do, but this isn't really it. I'm just trying to get through this fight so I can celebrate. But I don't know how I'm going to have fun in it. I'll have fun after, but he just has that tick. But why I asked about Shoney Carter is, it's funny. Like, if you watch that video from a perspective of today with the sanctioning body and all the rules and this, like, I mean, you can't even get near the cage as a fan nowadays, let alone like how things were back then. It was just back in the day, but it's like on both ends. It's like, all right, training partner of yours is reffing, which would never go by.
Yeah,
he had like 5 or 6 people in his corner, which would never be allowed now. And I'm like, oh my God, how many people are allowed to corner? I'm like, this is like, and it's just kind of funny. Yeah. Like I said, how different it was.
It was, I even talk about Shoney being the ref. He was ref that fight. Was go back. I remember when Terry Martin fought Stephan Bonner. I think it was on one of Iron Crowns. It was the Kevin success.
Civic Center.
I think one of the big upsets about that fight was I believe Terry won, but Miguel Torres was one of the judges, and he was training with Bonner at that time.
Yeah,
I mean, and it goes to this. It's like back then, it was like, hey, you want to judge? You want to ref? Don't matter what gym you're from. Hey, we need a guy to judge. We need a guy to ref. And fight night, we're putting it together. You're the guy. You're the guy. Right. But yeah, that was Shoney was still there, and I think it was a comment those showed. So I think that's probably why he got the reffing nod that night.
So you're on a 4-fight win streak after that, including a win on January 28th, 2006 at TKO over Samuel Goulet. How was this booked? And did you feel that they were trying to bring you in like for revenge over Sam Stout or anything for that? That
was the initial deal. It was a 3-fight contract. I was supposed to get 2 fights to become a number 1 contender, fight two of the top guys, become the number 1 contender, and then the third fight, last fight in the deal, was I was supposed to fight Sam Stout for the title. That was the initial contract with that, and that was a great experience, a great time, good show out there. That was my first, I think, international fight, leaving the country to fight.
Another faraway fight. So I want to ask how this got made because it's a local fight. It's you versus Kevin English, but it's for Lou Neglia out at Ring of Combat in Atlantic City. How did
Yeah.
you guys end up fighting there?
It was a tournament. Send your resume, send your video in type of deal thing. Lou Dudley, obviously, it was a big card, big show back then, and it was an 8-man tournament, I believe, over a course of a couple months. And it was just kind of a submit your submit your video resume, and they'll choose you if they think you're qualified or however it was. Meaning, I believe, I remember me and English talked back then. I think they kind of, we were the Midwest, a lot of East Coast guys out there, and I think they kind of put us up to fight each other first round, because trying to let these guys eliminate each other versus eliminate an East Coast guy. And that's how I felt. There were some of the brackets had some easier draws, I guess you could say.
Now, being a tournament, so this went to a no contest, 2-part question. What made it the no contest? And then did anybody advance, or were you guys just out of the tournament after
that? That's one of those topics I don't discuss much. Because Kevin English is a good guy. He's a good guy. I got no beef with the guy. And if he sees this, still no beef. But that was a questionable fight. I felt he was a better wrestler than me. I've trained with him before because I trained with the Wazuskis out in Dunedin. He was a Dunedin guy, where Elkins was from, Eddie Wineland. And so I know those guys very well. I trained with them. But it was at the point where both of us in our career where it's not just friends or training partners, just we're different gyms and we're going to try to get a payday. Both of us trying to get a big show. So let's do it. So going in, I knew he was a better wrestler. He had better wrestler credentials. So I was working my hands. My goal was to try to swing with him. He took me down early in the first, I'm going to say pretty quick. First exchange, tie up, and he went body locking me to my back. It was pretty easy. From there, I started working my guard. I started working, getting full guard. I went to hit a triangle. When I shot my leg, kicked my leg, it grazed his face. It wasn't a blast in the face. It was a, glancing. He yelled to the ref, kicked me in the face. The ref stopped the action. I go to my corner. I go to the corner, and they said he could continue. The fight was a no contest.
All right.
They put the replay up on the big screen. The crowd booed. I didn't think it was a reason to. I thought he could continue. Whether he could continue or not, that was not I don't know.
Right.
But that was no contest. He wound up advancing they advanced him in the tournament, and I believe he didn't. They eliminated him from the tournament because he was under contract with them for a 3-fight deal. He fought at another organization in between the tournament, his next bout, and I think they eliminated him from the tournament because of it. So both of us essentially got eliminated from the tournament.
Okay. Now, you began fighting over at Bourbon Street in April of 2007. Your first fight there was against Wayne Bogart, and then you actually faced him like about a month later. Were you originally booked to face him 2 times in a row, or was he like a last-minute replacement on something?
No, I was originally supposed to face on Bourbon Street. I think I pretty much handled him pretty easily, pretty quickly, and he was getting booked. I think whatever was going on another card. It was at Cicero Stadium. I don't know whose card it was. I think it may have been Master Bob Shermer's
The
card.
second one was a Chicago cage fight.
Yeah, when I fought him there, I was not initially being booked on that card. Wayne Bogart was being booked on the card. And I guess they were looking for opponents for him, and he actually wanted a rematch with me because he said I was a cheap win or I got lucky. One of them type, I was lucky. And again, it was like, well, how much are you gonna pay? It was like $500. I said, I'll go whoop this guy's ass for $500 real quick. I did it in a minute something last time. I'll do it again. And sure enough, it was pretty much. It was just one of those fights. This dude called me out, and I didn't have nothing scheduled, and I knew it was gonna be quick work. So it went there, made a couple $100, and did the same thing pretty much.
Okay, so soon after that, you fight at the IFL against LC Davis. How did you get on that? And was that a 1-fight deal, or did they give you like any type of contract or anything?
No, that was pretty much when I'm taking an L on that card, and I think that kind of, I mean, limited my advancements with that organization taking an L. Um, Again, I don't remember how that fight came about. I think Mark Miller,
Yeah.
he was uh he was on that team, and he was a G2. We were training at G2 at that time,
Mhm.
and they needed a 155 pounder for the team, and I think he's the one who kind of made the initial connection uh to get me on that card.
Now, did you have to train with anyone else on that team? Like, were there actual team training under Igor or anything, or was that just something that?
No, that was I think one of the difference with what our team versus like the Militich team or some of the other teams that they were out there. We were not. It was just guys put together on this team and let's represent the Bears. It was
Right.
really no organized practice where all these guys are going to work train together this day a week or that day a week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, you fought at the 6th Bourbon Street again, event, I should say. The opponent on paper's name is Victor Nidola. He's also gone by Victor Ditola, Victor Dicola, because I've seen him fight at multiple organizations. Do you
Oh
know
yeah,
if he's a Chad Wagner guy or no? Because I said that was very common for Wagner to change people's last names to hide their records.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That time it was more like, hey, we got a guy for you. You want to fight? Yeah, okay. I mean, it was just staying busy, staying active, looking for the next, next bigger card, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Now, did any more of that ever happen with you, where like, or have you seen that even as a cornerman, anything? Have you ever seen that happen, especially I guess in that era, or maybe from that camp where people are faking the names or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. Because again, there there was really I think everybody's trying to get at that time the UFC is getting bigger. They don't want their record being out there. They don't want, the record being out there, but they still want to get the fights to be active, but they don't want the L's on the record.
Right.
Hopefully, for a bigger card. I think that was pretty common. You go to some other states, you go down to Tennessee or Kentucky or wherever you want to. Some are starting to say we're not known up here in the Midwest. You go down there, get some scraps in, and you know, easier. Back then, there was no, like I said, Sure Dog was fairly new. There was not a lot of full kind type fighter. I think you had a fight uh, thing at that time with a fight record where you could look up the fighter's record, but there was not many at that time.
Right. Now, after your IC or ISCF fight in December 2008, you beat Brian Learn by TKO. You kind of take a layoff there. Was there any reason? Was it an injury? Were you just kind of moving on in life, or?
How many fights did I have after that? I can tell you that. Not many, right?
Yeah, was that the second to the last one? Let me pull it up really quick. I want to say that may have been the second to the last one. Let me see.
Uh yeah, at that time, I think even after
Yeah, it was.
yeah, I think even after uh the Sam Stout fight, the second Sam Stout fight, I started thinking about, this is really not for me anymore. It was I was fighting and going through motions. My son was wrestling at that time. I was married and had 3 kids. I started training and fighting pretty much late in my age, I guess you could say. People start competing. You know, I was a little older, so I think at that time a lot of my times were being coaching my son wrestling, and then I wound up having a breaking my leg. I broke a fibula, so that put me out for some time as well with the injury. And then they came back, and it was just kind of like I said, life changing, life happening.
Right. Kind of in the middle of this, you're reffing. Was that just a way to kind of stay involved without having to, you know?
No, the wrestling actually happened. That was uh, just like everything was coming, life was coming. I was at that time I was fighting. I was a union laborer. I was working construction. The housing market crashed, and I was laid off. And it was like, hey, you want to make a couple bucks reffing? And it was like, okay, sure. You know what I mean? And it kind of was just extra cash. I started coaching a little bit more. I started doing a little more. Overall, that's what kind of leading me out my MMA career. Coaching, reffing, kind of doing other things, still be involved in the sport and not really fighting no more. Still training, still being involved in the sport, not really fighting anymore. Just life was changing. Life was
Right.
changing.
So you were coaching a little bit around that time over at Southside Knockout. Did you approach them or did they approach you?
Uh all, again, I give credit to Mike Davis. A lot of these things, me getting involved in wrestling, me getting involved with coaching. He was always not just a manager, but just a friend, always looking out.
Right.
During that time as well, he knew I was laid off working, and say, hey man, he knew Brian Harney. Brian Harney was wrestler for Mount Carmel. I think he was a 2-time state champ for Mount Carmel. Obviously, Mike Davis went to Mount Carmel, so there was a connection there.
Right.
And I think he connected with Mike Davis, saying he was looking for a jiu-jitsu coach or MMA coach, to help out in his gym. So I went in there and started, hey, a little side gig, make a couple bucks, and that's how I started over there with Mike Davis was the one who made the introduction on that deal over there, and then just went hand in hand with me coaching and refing, just making weekend hustles, making a little money here and there.
Now you did one comeback fight 2011 at Cutthroat Supremacy at the Hammond Civic Center. Was this to make another run, or was it just kind of like to have closure to do one last fight?
It was, and again, I wasn't even thinking it was one last fight. I was laid off. I wasn't working really, and I was training. Now I was like, before I was working, we got the family. You don't have time to train. Training wasn't my priority. It was like,
right.
I'm working out in the sun 60 hours a week. I mean, you're burning. You come home, you don't want to train. You're tired.
Right.
You got babies that diapers coming on babies diapers you got to deal with, and there wasn't really much time to train. When I got laid off, it was like, man, I'm training 2-3 times a day now. I'm training in the morning. If I can't make a morning session, I'm running, or I was feeling pretty good, and the opportunity presented stuff. I was like, you know what? Yeah, let me get one in and see where it goes. And obviously, you never really realize it's going to be your last one. But that was, and it was my last one.
Now, were you, I know you were at Ooflocker at the time for that fight. Did you train much or you subside alive during that era?
He was lightweight, right? 135 or
Yeah.
he wound up
45,
moving
45.
out. Yeah. He was a tough threat. He was good. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah.
I was training. He was there. We were training there at the same time.
Yeah, really tough guy. Like just amazing grappling. He had a really successful run in 1FC. I mean, his wrestling and jiu-jitsu was sick.
Yeah, he was not stop go. I think even at that time, I don't even think he had a fight yet, or maybe one fight, if any, 1 or 2 fights, if anything. But I don't think at that time he was fighting. He was just training there.
Yeah, he was good. What were the early days at Combat Dough like in the training room?
Oh man, they were scraps too. They were fun. A lot of trash talking. A lot of George Spacek was there. He's our Shoney Carter, Terry Martin, Brian Gasaway, me, my brother. We had tons of tough dudes come. Rolly, Rolando was there. What's the head? We had just a ton of dudes, and then people coming streaming in, and we got a credible gym. A lot of guys want to visit. Bob, I think it was Bob Sherman, I believe, even though I didn't stay there. I believe at that time, Bob Shermer was one of the original, I believe, as well, pioneers of the beginning of MMA, because it was not just a jiu-jitsu practice or wrestling practice. It was, I'm going to teach you how to put them together. I'm going to put your wrestling with jiu-jitsu. I'm not coming here and just teaching you jiu-jitsu. I'm going to teach you how to put them together. He had a comment doing jiu-jitsu, his own style. And on top of that is I'm just going to not teach you how to throw hands, but how we're going to get this takedown off of throwing the hands. I think we were training more as a mixed martial artist than a lot of gyms were. I mean, back then it was a jiu-jitsu gym, and that was it. And they fought. They kind of cross-trained. But I don't think a lot of gyms were really training. And even the early days of G2, where I later went, that was, even now they had a reputation. You're a wrestling-based gym. You got a lot of wrestlers in here, And back in them days, I don't think no one really respected anybody from G2 coming out with hands. Now they do, but back in them days, it was like, oh, they're wrestlers. I think back to Combat Dough days that we had a Muay Thai class going on, a Jiu-Jitsu class. Bob was doing, it wasn't called an MMA class, but it was like fighter training class. We had guys coming in just to spar, get some sparring with takedowns. And back in them days, it was rare, I believe, them. So it was always not just the partners we had in there banging, but just what he was teaching at that time, I think was not really what a lot of other places were teaching.
Now, when you went over to G2, who would you usually gravitate to train with over there? Like, is your main
man? Everybody there. I think I went there. Number one, the partners. The partners were there. and it was everybody. I mean, as far as the lightweight, I fought 145, 155. You had number one, Clay Guida, Tommy Lee, Chase Beebe, Kevin Knapchuk was there. He was a little heavier than me. He made the Ultimate Fighter. Joey Gilbert, Danny Gilbert. Joey Gilbert's still on the mat. This old man still on the mat. I mean, Joey Gilbert, Danny Gilbert. What was the other guy? Ninad. He was a jiu-jitsu guy. He was in there, tough dude.
Yeah.
He was in there. I mean,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a tough grappler on the ground, and it was anybody you go in there was, and for me being in there like training with guys and Tommy Lee and Chase, the Beebe brothers and them guys is. I wrestled from the South Side. I didn't have, to me, these kids been wrestling. These guys been wrestling their whole life since they were kids. You know, Tony Marty would come in there too as well. He'd get in there. Yeah, I mean, just the name of wrestler credentials coming in there and just make, even if they didn't know her hands weren't good, they were gonna get a takedown. They were gonna get a takedown, and that's where I think my ground improved is. I'm coming in there. If I got a takedown a week, I was lucky. I was never getting a takedown in that room. I was going in there, working off my back, working my hands, learn to get off my back because I was never getting a takedown. If I got a takedown in there, I was doing cartwheels. I was literally screaming like a freak.
Right.
Because I was, the level of the talent is there was nothing compared to my wrestling was, you know?
Yeah, no, I believe me. I remember the feeling walking in there and looking around like I'm the only one who's not a state champion. Like this.
Yeah, Matt Kukla was in there as well. He's lighter weight. He was in there too. I mean, all these guys got multiple state championships, multiple brackets, wrestled in college, and for me, it was like, wow, this is the place to be. And because again, I try to train. I went from there and I started training MTC and G2. Those were my two gyms I was training at. And it was kind of how I coach my son. I don't ever want to be the toughest dude in the room, you know. And I think that's what Combat No. At that time, a lot of older guys weren't trained or going to places. I think at that time when I was Combat No, it was not there anymore than the earlier days, you know. And when I went to G2, it was like, man, I'm getting my ass whooped every partner I got. I'm getting slammed on my head.
Yeah,
you know,
those were the glory days of that. When you look back at your fight career, what is the single fight that stands out the most with you as like your most memorable fight?
The most memorable fight. I don't know. I really don't have any that really, you know. I have, you know, a lot of good memorable fights. You know, I think my first win probably in Canada, you know, was a pay-per-view event out there. I just think my time in Canada, it was a really good experience. When I fought Sam South the second time, I remember going out there. We went out for burgers or hot dogs or something like that. And everybody speaks, Montreal's French. Everybody speaks French out there.
Yeah.
We went to a hot dog joint after the fight, found whatever place was open. And this dude's telling me, like, and speaking in French, I'm like, you know, I don't know what you're saying. And then like, hey, no one speaks English here? Like, no, like, no one speaks English. Dude went and got the newspaper. And on the back page of the sports section, it had a big old flyer of me and Stout as the main event at the Bell Center out there. You know, and even though, like I said, I took a win out there, I took an L out there, I think, but both of them were really, hey, you're doing it, you're doing this here. You know, you made it from a small show, and you know, it's just a small show, and in you know, Ottawa behind the strip club. You're out here in a big show. It was kind of a good feeling, you know.
But during around that time, were there any talks of the UFC or any Ultimate Fighter tryouts or anything like that?
There was. And I believe, like, remember back, there was a 155, there wasn't a 155 division. It was 155 was the WC.
Right.
So when the UFC first took on the 155 division, they had Ultimate Fighter tryout. I mean, I don't know what happened there. Then I got interviewed. Obviously I was interviewed. There was talks about that, making it there, making it on the show. And that was the first one. That's what Nate Diaz was on that show.
Yeah. BJ Penn and who was the other coach? Oh, Jens Pulver. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I think I've been, like I said, I my whole life, I've grown up rough. I have made some mistakes in my life early on in life as a youth. And when a question asked me if I was a felon came up, I said, yeah. And I think the whole demeanor changed. And I felt that, you know, there's someone they're going to put as a star, potential star on TV, and you start digging into people's backgrounds. I think once he dug into my background a little bit prior to MMA, I think they were like, yeah, this ain't the guy we're going to put on our card. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Whereas true or not, it's whereas true or not. And then a couple of opportunities, I think, were in talks. We're gonna go. I was under the eye, but I took a couple of L's. When I took the loss of Stout, Stout was under a UFC contract at that time.
Yeah.
So when I lost him, I think it was kind of when I lost him. I could say big fights that I lost that if I would have won them, I think would have, you know, would have got me there. You know,
Right.
but
Right.
I took the L's on those. Hey, win this one, you may get the call. You know,
Right.
win this one, you may get the call. And I think taking those L's, but as far as look back at it now, you know, the age I was at, and because I was had a wife and 3 kids working 60 hours a week. It was kind of, you know, it's not like it is today. It was a different time then, you know.
Now, do you remember? I have one guess, but maybe I'm wrong. Your this had to be like 2000, either 2007 or 2008, maybe 2008. You were scheduled to fight at C3 at the Hammond Civic Center Braulio show when they kind of split up with Ironheart Crown. I remember they put you on the website on the fight card. There was a picture of you.
Yeah.
Do you remember who your opponent was? I'm guessing Chris Canelli, but I could be wrong.
I do not remember, but I remember that was when I broke my leg. I broke my leg the week before that fight.
Okay.
So that's when
I was helping Ray Flores matchmake for those cards at the time. I just can't really remember who the opponent was, and it was driving me nuts. Maybe it wasn't.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me, and I'll text you later when it comes to.
Yeah, sounds good. So a couple more questions. We'll wrap up. We were talking about the beginning of this. MMA was so big in the area. It was like this. Whether it be the Chicagoland area or Northwest Indiana, we were a hotbed in the early 2000s, late 2000s, or 2000 to 2010. Now it's really lost its luster. Why do you think that is? Local shows.
Local shows. I wouldn't say it's lost. I think at one point there was a lot of shows coming in here. I think competing for the same fight with the same fighters. I think that was one. Secondly, then again, I don't know who sees it, but I really don't care. I think once the state started getting their hands on a lot more things, you know, people got a bad taste in it, you know.
Yeah, that's kind of what I attribute it to.
I think there's no if as a promoter, if you're not making any money here because the state's charging you this, or you're paying this, or you're giving you a hassle about this, and you're going to get shut down. People don't want to deal with the hassle,
right?
You know? And like I said, I've been on every part of a MMA organization besides the promoter level. You know, I've been a ref, I've been a ring guy, I've been so I kind of have a good feel how the shows run. And again, it's a hectic thing to do. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of money invested in it, and a lot of time. And here it feels like the state ain't trying to help you any. They're trying to, like they're against you. Everything you come, they're against you. You know.
And if you look, there's so many local fighters where once they start to get to that level where they're almost on the UFC radar, they end up moving, and it's because they got to get fights elsewhere because they're not. There's no pro fights in Illinois anymore. Maybe very rarely, I should say, but compared to how it was years ago, it's night and day. But
if you're gonna have a pro card, it's not a full pro card. They're gonna have an AMI card. I'm gonna have 4 or 5 pro fighters on the card. It's not going to be a whole lineup of a pro fight, you know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, unaffordable and lack of local fighters. Like, I mean, it's crazy. Like, if you look at Tapology now, you look at the regional rankings or by state. You click on any weight class of pros, 135, 45. There's like 4 or 5 listed only. Years ago, there'd be like 30 of them listed, which was crazy. But it's. I mean, hopefully it makes its comeback. I'm really missing the old days that I miss the fights at Bourbon Street. I miss it seems like almost everything's almost. Joe's still doing he's still running strong. I mean, that guy,
he's regardless of what name he runs his show, and he's been one of the founding fathers of MMA in his era. You know, the first show I ever went to, and still here now. He could still pack a house. You know,
right? He's like the sole survivor of the Chicagoland MMA.
I do tell you what, man, because you brought up Bourbon Street. Are all the venues that I fought. I think Bourbon Street, regardless of one of the biggest crowds or whatever, it was a great fight feeling in there. Obviously, between Bourbon Street, I think, and I would say a packed Hammond Civic Center,
Mm.
Bourbon Street, because when you got the people on the stage, it's like you're in a backyard brawl.
Yeah, they're on
Like you
top
got
of
your,
you.
yeah, you got your fans literally cheering you on. You can look up and see your cousin or your
Right,
brother right there as you're
right.
strapping. You know, it's
Oh,
like
exactly.
I think when in the cage, it's small, but just the crowd's so loud, and like I said, you look over, you see your people there. It feels like you're in a, after school fighting. You're in the middle of a circle, and everybody's scrapping all
Oh
around.
yeah, and it's so loud. Like
Yeah,
I debuted there. You were my ref for my debut fight. After like not the next fight, but after a couple more fights later, I was kind of like, man, I think I would have like been way more calm if I didn't debut at Bourbon Street. I wasn't ready for that atmosphere that you're talking about. Like it was
yeah,
way
yeah.
too in your face for me to like be put in there for the first time. Like
Yeah.
man, I kind of wish the crowd was a little bit further away. Like when I fought at Congress Theater, that was perfect. It was a huge venue, but it was probably like 10, 15 feet of space between the like the railing of the crowd and the cage, that was like a nice
Yeah.
space that, but like, yeah, no, like you're talking about Bourbon Street. Oh my God. It was just nuts. It was insane.
And I'm not sure like what the cage sizes are, different venues or different promoters, but that cage is pretty small at Bourbon because
It is. Yeah. And there's
because you got to fit it, you got to fit it in that bar. You got the big beams there. You got to fit
that's
it
the
in
thing. Yeah. It
there.
has to fit between the stage and that pillar. So it's nerve wracking. Nowadays, are you into let's just say it's a Friday night, Saturday night, you don't want to leave the couch, you just want to chill back, popcorn. You have two choices: college wrestling or current MMA. What are you turning on the TV?
I think my first would be college wrestling.
Yeah.
I think would be my first. It's just so much active, so much faster pace. I think these guys are going at it. You know, guys. I mean, MMA. Some of these guys now, I feel some of the is everybody's about the knockout. They want to stand up, and some of these guys aren't. If I watch a regular MMA show now, sometimes it's like, yeah, you wait for knockout, but some of these guys aren't that good strikers.
Right.
So I just read it, but yet they're both standing and swinging, and neither one of them are very good. But they're not going for the takedown. Like so, I'm a grappler by heart. A lot of these guys want to dance around. I'd rather just go back to college wrestling, action shots, doubles moving. I mean, sprawls, hipping. You know, I mean, I'd rather watch a college wrestling match, my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. And me personally, I can't stand the point fighting. 25 minutes of jab, leg kick, circle, move, head movement, one more leg kick. Like it's a lot long for 25 minutes for me to sit through.
Yeah, and you know, going back to I tell guys I work with now, dudes in front of you, go punch them in the face. Right. Simple as that. I'm not going to dance around and try to feel this guy out. I'm going to feel him out when I walk him down and start throwing punches at him. That's how we're going to feel each other out. You know, a lot of these guys, it seems like they're scared to get punched in the face. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Whereas back in them days, it was like, no, that's part of it. That's what makes it fun, getting punched in the face, you know?
Right. Yeah, I always say I would like to see some of these more point fighters fighting UFC 1 through like 10 where it was untimed, because the game plan would have to be you can't fight based on, okay, I'm going to impress the judges for the next 15 to 25 minutes. There's no judges. It's a completely different game. Now you actually have to go out and try to kill the guy, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, that wraps it up. Any plugs that you want to give? Tell people what you're doing now, anything like that?
Yeah, I want to, again, a couple shout outs. We got my boy Angelo Rivera's fighting August 3rd, Horseshoe Casino. And then I got one of my guys I put work in, because we're more of a training partner, Scotty Sopko. He's fighting August 31st at Central Stadium. So I think we got a couple of guys from Team Cologne right now. Usually I would say my home gym would be Team Cologne out in Maryville, and Lamont MMA and Lamont. I try, whenever I get some time, I try to get in there on Saturday morning, Sunday morning, get some open mat in Lamont. And when I got some time, I'm feeling healthy, I'm out usually over at Cologne's training. So I know we got a couple guys fighting from Cologne's on August 3rd as well. A couple guys coming up on iCards coming up soon. So be a good month. It's going to be a good month.
Nice. Yeah, I just sent a couple of my students over to Cologne's for a seminar over at Steve's gym. And then one of his 14-year-olds just trained at my school a couple nights ago. Great group of people over there. That's for sure. Really nice gym. Steve's been in it forever. Great guy.
Yeah, he opened his doors to me. My son's senior year during COVID, they canceled wrestling in Illinois, so I moved out to Crown Point, and he wanted wrestling out in Indiana. And I was like, okay, I'm on Indiana. What do I do now? I'm out here with nothing to do. And Steve was right down the street, opened his doors to me, and been there now, working out. If any fighters there want some extra help, I'm there. I always want to put some extra help with some guys, but yeah, that's usually my home gym where I'm at now. Love it there. Like I said, we're good because me and Steve, we got sometimes the same mindset as far as the fight game, and we both been around a long time. And anything I can do there to help him out, help his gym out there, I'm there doing it.
For sure. Jay, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
All right, thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.